Hello, let's do the New York Times Medium Sudoku for May 2nd, 2024. I take a systematic approach as a teaching aid to these puzzles, which is why the video length is so long. The idea is to introduce you to the important concepts in the order that you should be looking for them, or could be looking for them in terms of finding the low-hanging fruit first and then the more advanced stuff later. You do not have to take such a systematic approach to your solves, but I do recommend maybe trying it out a couple times so you can get a feel for what exactly it is I'm telling you to look for, how to find it, and that way you're not missing that kind of thing when you're doing a more hybrid solve in the future. If you want to watch a more hybrid solve, my hard solves kind of incorporate all this advice in a little bit more, and I do it in a little bit more of a flexible manner, and I don't explain as much. So I still explain what's important, but I'm introducing the names of things in here and explaining how those work, and then I just use the name in the hard solve. Okay, well, that's a long intro, but if you want to try the puzzle yourself using this same software called Sudoku Pad, there is a link in the description. It is free. And I'm going to get started right now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, let's talk about terminology. This is a row. This is a column. This is a box. Each individual one of these, there's 81 of them, is a cell. And then a row of 3 boxes I'm going to call a band. And a column of 3 boxes I'm going to call a stack. So there's 3 bands and 3 stacks in the puzzle. 9 boxes, 9 rows, 9 columns, 81 cells. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the bands. It doesn't really matter what you start with, but by being systematic about it and consistent about it, we don't forget to do one of them. The more important thing is that we need to be doing all of these things. And so by picking a systematic order in these solves, we're making sure we're not missing it. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is we're looking at bands, and we're barely going to be peeking out of the bands. I'll tell you when we do. It'll be pretty soon, but we're mostly paying attention to horizontal logic within the band and individual logic within the boxes themselves sometimes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for digits that repeat in the band. We want digits that appear exactly twice. So the most efficient way to look for that is we need to compare each box against each other box, which means we need 3 comparisons in total, right? 1 verse 2, 1 verse 3, and 2 verse 3. So you don't want to then go back and do 3 verse 2. That's a waste of time. So what I do is I pick a box with the fewest givens in it. In this case, there's 2 with 3. I just picked this one. And I'm going to think about those 4 digits, and I'm going to look for them in both boxes at once. So 4, 6, 7. So I don't see any 4s. I do see a 6. So we have a buddy 6 here. I call these buddies, right? So there's exactly 2 6s in this band. And because there's 2 of them, right? Because each row can only have a single 6. Well, each row will have exactly 1 6. Each box will have exactly 1 6. What that means is that we have covered 2 rows and 2 boxes. So there's going to be 1 row and 1 box that still needs a 6, and we have to put it in the overlap. So box 2 here still needs a 6, and row 1 here still needs a 6. And so 6 ends up in one of these 3 cells. And you can think about it this way as well. This 6 says that within this box, the 6 is not going to be in these 3 cells because we can't repeat in this row. And this 6 says it's not going to be in one of these 3 cells because we can't repeat in this row. Well, we need a 6 in the box in general, so it's going to be in this row within this box. Now, this is where we're going to glance down real quick. We're going to just check if we have any 6s below us, and we do. We have this 6 here. And so then we just remove that as a possibility because we can't repeat 6 in this column either. So 6 ends up being in one of these 2 cells. Now, this is where I'm going to start introducing our notation concepts, because it would be really nice to remember that 6 was limited to 2 cells in this box. That's important information to remember. We don't want to have to rescan that later when we discover that one of these cells got filled. So we use notation to remember that. Now, the notation I recommend using for this kind of thing is corner marks. Now, just to be clear, that's a corner mark and that's a center mark. You can see why they're called that. One goes in the corner, one goes in the center. If I put another digit, like 4, then you can see that the 4 and the 6 end up in corners of the boxes, and the 4 and 6 here end up in centers. So we're going to be using corner marks here, and we're just going to corner mark 6 into every cell in this box that can be 6. So what our corner marks are always going to mean is that if a digit is present in corner marks at all within a box, then those are the exhaustive list of cells that can be that digit in the box. So because 6 exists as corner marks in this box, that means that we have reduced 6 to these 2 cells in the box. Now, I say that because, it's not like I'm saying, well, I don't have 1 corner marked, so 1 can't go in the box at all. That's not what I mean, because none of the cells are corner marked as 1, right? What I mean is that because I've corner marked 6s, that's what that means. And that's the only thing I'll ever have corner marks mean. Now, in addition to that, I'm only ever going to do that when we've been reduced to 3 or fewer cells in the box. For 2 cells in the box, I'm always going to do it no matter where they are in the box. For 3, I'm only going to do it if they share a row or share a column. All 3 of them. Because what I don't want is like a bent pattern or like a sporadic pattern of corner marks within a box, because that's going to interfere with being able to scan it properly. Hopefully you'll see why when we get to pointing and claiming. All right, so with all that said, we found the buddy 6s. Whenever we find buddies like that, we're always going to either be corner marking, or we might find a hidden single and place the digit, which I think we're going to have in a moment. So the other thing is we do have these 2 7s, so we are going to need a 7 in this row, so we can just corner mark 7, one of these 3. And now we finished looking at comparing this box to these 2. We just need one more comparison, which is these 2 boxes against each other. And I'm going to look at the one with the fewest givens, so 2, 5, 7. And the 2 is the only one that repeats there. So we have these 2 2s here. They take 2 out of these. Now, looking at this last row, this 4 can't be 2 because it's already 4. Can't put 2 digits in the same cell. And this 2 down here that we looked at, I know it's way down there, but there is a 2 there, prevents this cell from being 2. So now I could corner mark a 2 here, right? But I don't need to because we know that this cell is 2. It's called a hidden single. This box needs a 2. It needs to put a 2 in one of its cells, and there is only one cell that it can put 2 in. Therefore, it is a 2. So we can just place the 2 as a big digit. We have our first actual digit placed in the puzzle, and it's this 2 here. Now, normally when we place a digit, I would tell you to follow up on it, but on this first band, there's nothing to follow up on. In this systematic solve, you might be a bit more flexible later, but in this systematic solve, I recommend only following up on things you've already looked for. And in this case, because we've just started the puzzle and we're on the first band, there's nothing else we've already looked for, so we don't need to follow up on the first band. Okay, so that was all of the buddies. Now, we could move on to the next band and look for buddies there, but before we move on from a band, there's 2 things I want you to look for. The first thing is a completely filled row within a box. We don't have any of those. These come close, but they need one more digit in them, right? This one as well. And then the next thing I want you to look for is a row or a box that has been reduced to 4 or fewer open cells. So this row is an example here. It's been reduced to 3 open cells. In general, it even started as 4, but it's been reduced to 3. So this is where we're going to use center marking. Now, what center marking is going to mean is, well, let's think about this row first, right? The row needs 3 more digits. It's got 7 out of the 9 digits accounted for. Sorry, 6 out of the 9 digits accounted for. So there's 3 left. I don't know why I said 7. And so those are going to be 3 digits, right? 3 digits to go in these 3 cells that are the missing 3. And what are the missing 3? They are the 1, the 3, and the 9. So we want to think about 1, 3, and 9 and where can those go in these cells. And the first thing I see is that this cell here, and I'm scanning its column and I'm scanning its box, right? We don't care about the row because this came from the row. But we see that we have a 3 and a 9 in the box. And those are 2 of the digits that I noticed. And this cell can't be a 3 or a 9 because it can't repeat the 3 in the column and it can't repeat the 9 in the box. So it's down to just a single digit, the 1. So if there's only one digit that can go in the cell without breaking Sudoku rules, well, we need to put a digit into every cell. So 1 is the only thing we can. And that's called a naked single, because if you just pay attention to the cell, it's nakedly clear. It's just visibly clear that that's going to be a 1 because it can't be anything else, right? Let's just go through it. It can't be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? There's also this 2, if you prefer. So I said every digit except 1. That it can't be, so it must be 1. But that does leave 2 digits left for this row. What are the 2 digits? Well, they're the 3 and the 9 that we eliminated from here, right? 3 and 9 are still left for this row. And I'm not seeing anywhere that says, well, one of these is 3, one of these is 9. So in the final solution, we know 1 will be 3 and 1 will be 9, right? Or another way to put that, this cell will be 3 or 9 and this cell will be 3 and 9, and they're going to be different digits. But we don't know which is which yet, and we're not going to guess. I'm not going to just fill a 3 here and then hope the puzzle solves. There lies madness. We aren't going to do that. So we're only going to place digits when we are 100% logically sure that that is the only digit that can go in that cell. Not just because it can go in. It's the only digit that can go in. And so must go in, right? So we have a logical proof that that digit is that digit. And by doing so, because there's only one solution to the Sudoku, by doing so, we will eventually solve it by using logical means without making mistakes, assuming that we stick to our logic. Okay. So we want to remember that this cell is going to end up 3 or 9 only, and this cell is going to end up 3 or 9 only. That's important information that we want to remember. So we're going to use center marks for that. We're going to center mark 3 and 9 into both cells. Because almost coincidentally, I mean, there's logical reasons, right? But these two cells happen to both be reduced to 3 and 9, which is why they look identical with the center marks. But that's the only reason, right? Because we're looking just at the cell. So a center mark is a cell-centric marking. The corner mark, we're going to call that box-centric. The center mark is cell-centric. So in the final solution, what this center mark is telling us is that when we look at this cell, it's going to be a 3 or a 9. When we look at this cell, it'll be a 3 or 9. This 6 is a little different, right? It's telling us that when we look at the final solution and we look at where the 6 goes in this box, it'll be one of these two cells. But it's not specifically telling us full information about these two cells, because one of them will be 6, but the other one could be any other digit. We don't know. We don't have that marked. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what we're using center marks for. And I'm only going to center mark cells, and I recommend that you do this as well, that are down to 3 or fewer candidates. If we're at 4 or more, you're just going to clutter the grid, and you're going to run into problems with scanning, with clutter. It's going to get hard near the middle of the puzzle. And you're going to have trouble closing out the puzzle if you do that. In my opinion, it's just going to make it annoying. It's also a lot of marking. Okay, so that you can see why we looked at this row. It was down to 4 or fewer, and it was actually down to 3, and we actually got a digit out of it, and we got some nice markings out of it that we like. Now we're going to continue to look, because now, by placing this 1, I've done 2 things, right? We need to follow up on what we already looked for. Well, first of all, I already looked for buddies, but we don't have a buddy 1, so that's okay. I also already looked for rows that were filled, and this row is now filled. So I'm going to tell you what to look for here. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight the 2 rows that aren't the row that's filled in the 2 boxes that aren't the box that is in, right? So just like this. So we're looking at these 3 cells. We're going to look at these 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore anything that's just empty. And we're also going to ignore anything that's already placed in the box. So the 2, the 6, but not the 7. Now, if we didn't already have these 7s marked, this is where we would do it. Because what we're doing now is we're saying, well, this 7 says these can't be 7, and these are filled with non-7s. So there's only 1 row left for the 7s. So it does kind of like give you a virtual buddy. We actually have the real buddy here. But if we didn't, it would tell us that there's also a 7 down here. Because this row needs a 7, right? These are filled by design of while we're looking at this. These are filled. They can't be 7. And this 7 here says these aren't 7, and so this row is going to need it in this box. And so it actually tells us there's a 7 here and there's a 7 here, which is very handy. But in this case, we already knew that, so that's not as helpful, and that's all I found out of that. And then also we need to follow up on this box, which is now down to 4 open cells. So what are they? We just think about it. We need a 3, 4, 5, and 7. So we're looking down here. We're looking in the rows. And because we found this in the box, right? So we're looking at the rows, we're looking at the columns, and we're looking for 3, 4, 5, 7. So I see this 3 here. And this 3 is actually really interesting to me because it means these 2 cells aren't 3, leaving 3 to just these 2 cells. Well, when we're reduced to only 2 cells in the box, guess what? We can corner mark that. Now let's follow up on that because when we do it this way, where we found it just within the box like this, where there was stuff placed in the box. When we didn't do it through buddies, basically, this is going to do something called pointing. Let me explain pointing real quick. So what do the 3s mean in this box? We're going this up. What do the 3s in the corners mean? It means that in the final solution, either this cell will be 3 or this cell will be 3. Those are the only 2 options. There's not a third option. They're not going to be neither 3. They're not going to be both 3. If you can think of something else, it's not that either. 3 will be here or 3 will be here. Those are the 2 worlds. What do those have in common? Well, they're both in row 2. So row 2 is 3. We found it. It's over here. It's fuzzy a little bit, like our vision's a little fuzzy, but it's going to be one of these 2 for sure, which means it's definitely not over here, right? Especially outside the box, right? These 3s are saying these can't be 3, and that's new information to us. Now, we can't use that immediately because that doesn't limit the 3s in any of these boxes in a way that's useful. But it is helpful to have these corner marks to remind us that none of these are 3 now. We actually didn't know about any of that. We thought these could be 3 before just now. Okay, and the other thing I'm seeing is that this cell here is not 3 or 7, right? That's definitely worth center marking with the 2 digits it can be, because it was down to 4 and it can't be 3 or 7. So it's down to 4 and 5. When I said down to 4, I meant down to a count of 4 digits. But it just so happens to have 4 as an option as well. So, because remember, we need to be 3, 4, 5, 7. So now this one also isn't 3. So I'm happy to put 4, 5, 7 in there. It's 3 digits that are remaining. And this cell can't be 5. So we can put 3, 4, 7 without the 5. Now this can be any of 3, 4, 5, 7. So we're not going to mark it. So this is exactly everything that we wanted to look for in this band. And you can see we got quite a bit out of it. And we even learned about these pointing 3s, which do affect these rows, but not in a way that we can appreciate at the moment. But we're going to try to remember that. And these quarter marks are going to try to help us remember that. Okay. So now we are done with this band. There's no more filled rows to look at. There's no more buddies. There's no more rows or boxes down to 4 or fewer that we haven't looked at. Okay, so now we move on to the next band. And you can obviously do this a lot quicker if you aren't explaining everything along the way, right? So I started here because it's down to 1 given. We compare against these 2. We see that the 6 is the buddy. These 6s look in. So 6 is going to end up in one of these 3 cells. This 6 says not here. This 6 says not here. So actually we have a hidden single 6. We can place it. All right. There are no more buddies, right? The 7 doesn't help us. But this is filled. So we want to look at these cells here. We don't care about empty cells. We don't care about digits that are already placed in the box. So 6 is already placed in this middle box, but the 7 is helpful. So what did I say? We can pretend that there is a 7 here, taking the 7 out of these 3, because there's also a 7 here, right? So we know kind of which rows in each box the 7 goes in. And this 7 says not here, and this 6 says not here. So I can actually just corner mark all these 7s right away. If you want to do it step by step, the way I would recommend doing it, if you want to follow the logic, if you don't remember exactly like which rows to put them in, the logic is quite straightforward. So this 7 says 7's not in these 3 cells in this box, and 8, 4, 1 are not 7, so 7's not in these 3 cells. And then this 7 looks down. So 7 has been reduced to just these 2 cells in the box. We can corner mark that. And now these 7s point, right? Remember pointing, I just went over it with the 3s. 7's going to be in one of these 2 cells, so it's not over here. And this 7 says not here, and this 6 says not here. So 7 ends up in one of these 2. So if you can remember how this pattern works out, then you can do it much more quickly. But if you want to go through the logic in your head to verify, you absolutely can. No problems there. So we have the 7s here and the 7s here, corner marked. And the important thing is we have learned that these 3 cells are not 7. We didn't know that, but now we do. That's what these corner marks are reminding us of, is that these are not 7. Okay, because of the pointing. And also claiming. If you want to use the claiming here, that actually works for the row. Okay, so and claiming is kind of the same as pointing. It's just a row claiming the 7 from the box. So this row needs a 7, right? This 7 says not here. These are not 7. This is not 7. So 7 in this row will be in one of these 2 cells. Well, if it's here in this row, then it's nowhere else in the box, right? Just cross your eyes and squint and go, well, 7 is here, 7's here in this cell, right? Which means it's not in these cells. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and that's all we've got for this band. There are no rows or boxes down to 4 or fewer. So we'll move on to the next band. I'm just gonna start here with the 1, 3, 5. We do find 1s, but we find 3 1s, so that's not helpful. And then the 3 and the 5 have no buddies. And then again, ignoring the 1, we have the 2 and the 9. So 2 is the only buddy here. These 2s look in, and these are not 2. So 2 is placed in this cell here as a hidden single. There are no more buddies, but we did fill this, so we have virtual buddies to deal with, potentially. So we don't care about the 1, it's already in the box. 2 is already in the box, but 6 and 9 are not. So let's start with the 6. So the 6 is going to have a virtual buddy here, actually just exactly here, which we're pretending took the 6 out of these 3. And then we end up with a 6 here. So we can actually place all 3 of these 6s. But let's go through that a little bit slower using the technique I talked about earlier. So where does 6 go in this box? Well, this 6 says not in these 3 cells. This 2, 5, 3 says not in these 3 cells. Then we also have this 6 taking out of here and this 6 taking out of here. So there is actually only one cell in this box that can be 6, so it must be. So we place that 6. And now 6 has a buddy looking in here, and this 6 looks down. This is not a 6. We can place the 6 here. So you can see how the shorthand works. It is logically correct. And it has to do with where 6 goes in this row and where 6 goes in this row as a result. Or where 6 goes in this box and where 6 goes in this box as a result. It'll give you the same logic. Now, this 6, we want to follow up. We see that it sees this corner mark 6 that we have up here. Whenever we place a digit, it's always good to scan its row, column, and box to see if you have any markings that thought they could be 6 that now can't be. And this red mark, it's an option in the settings. You're welcome to turn it on or off based on your preference. It is the check pencil marks option under gameplay. I have that on so I don't miss it because I think missing something trivial gets in the way of the tutorial. But we scanned this 6, we placed it, right? We want to scan its column, its row, and its box for any markings that we have that say 6, and we want to remove that. So we remove this corner mark 6. Now, when we do that, that triggers us to look to see how many 6s there are left in this box that are corner marked, and there's just 1. And so we found the cell that had to be 6. Of these 2, it's not this one anymore, so it's this one. We can place that 6 right away. You see the usefulness way early on. It was one of the first markings we did, if not the first, was putting 6 corner marked into one of these 2. And now that we got this 6 way down here, we don't have to rescan and say, okay, well, we had the buddy 6s here, then this 6 looks up and this 6 looks up. Okay, you don't have to rescan that because the corner marks already, we can trust it. I mean, it's already telling us that. Now, placing this 6, we want to follow up horizontally. Any buddies? Well, no, because we already have 3 of them. Did I fill up a row within the box? No, I did not. Did I cause a row or box to be down to 4 or fewer cells? No, I did not. So nothing to follow up on that 6, but it was good to look. And so we also placed this 6, but we're still scanning this band, and we haven't scanned this stack yet, so nothing to follow up on. So that was the buddy. That was the 6, but remember, we still had the 9 to take care of. It's always important to remember what you're doing there. And so this 9 is going to have a buddy over here, and it's going to have a buddy up here. And if we look more carefully, we see this isn't 9, and this 9 up here says this isn't 9. So we can actually place the 9 in this box. Right? You can see it's the only place for 9 in the box. And then that does corner mark 9s over here as well. So it's got a buddy now. Okay. Now we look for we were looking for filled rows. We continue to look for that. That was the only one. Make sure you cover all of them. And now we look for rows or boxes down to 3 or fewer digits. Or sorry, 4 or fewer digits. And we're going to start with this one, which is down to 3. We want to start with the one that's least, if possible. So we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, right? So we need 4, 7, 8. And I'm looking to see if there's any singles. There aren't. So I'm just going to fill 4, 7, 8 here, but I do see that this 8 takes 8 out of here. I saw that. And so actually what we can see is that 8 is reduced to only these 2 cells in this box. Now, that actually does points in here. This 8 looks down here. This 8 looks in. We're about to do this stack, so I think it's not too bad to just look and put those corner marks in now so that we don't forget to use the pointing. If you get pointing, I recommend using it right away because it's a lot harder to it's a little bit harder to notice when you're doing your scan later. The big numbers are easier to notice for buddies, right? When we were doing a buddy check, we would have had to have noticed, oh, we have these pointing 8s, which technically give a buddy, which I may have noticed or may not have, but following up right away is helpful on something like pointing, if you can. These 3s I tried to, but I could not because there wasn't anything to do with those 3s, right? Okay, anyway. That is that box. Now, this row is also down to 4 digits, and we know this one's not 9, so that's going to be helpful. But what are the 4 digits? They are the 4, 7, 8, 9. Well, we know that this cell's not 7 or 9, so this is down to 4, 8, which means that the 7, actually, where does 7 go in this row? Well, it's not in any of these cells, and it's not here, right? That triggered us to go, wait, I was noticing that these 3 cells were all in the same box. This is the only one not in it, and it can only be 4, 8, which means that the 7 and the 9 are limited. I already have the 9 marked here, but I can also mark the 7 here. But this 7 and this 7 say not here. So actually, we have a hidden single in the row, and that's something we're looking for specifically when we're thinking about a row or column or box that's been reduced to 4 or fewer. We're looking for hidden singles too. And so we can place the hidden single 7 in this row. This is the only cell that can be 7 in the row, so it must be. Now I'm just going to quickly follow up here and put 4, 8, 9 into these. This one can't be 4, just so that I don't forget. But we do want to follow up on the 7 if we can. We look for a buddy 7. We don't have one. Did we fill up a row? No, we did not. Did we cause a row or box to be down to 4 or fewer? We did not. Except the one that was already in. Okay. So nothing else really to follow up there. And I do believe that finishes the band. So we are done with that band. We're done with all the bands. So now we just repeat the same thing, exactly the same steps. We repeat that for the stacks. So I'm going to start with this 6, right, in this stack, right? We want to start with the box with the fewest givens. And just anytime I say row, just replace it with column when we're doing stacks. So we have all 3 6s, so that's not helpful. So now we just compare these boxes against each other. We've got 1, 2, 6, 8, 9. I've got a 1. A 1 is a buddy. Okay, we have these ones looking in, so 1's in one of these 2. The 2 has a buddy. Very nice. So 2 ends up in here somewhere. One of these 3. 1, 2, 6 is done. 8 has 8 did have the buddy. Remember, I said I might miss that, but we already marked it, so that's good. And then 9, we have these 2 9s looking up. This isn't 9, so 9's in one of these 2. Oops, not 8, 9. Okay. Let's see. So what we found all the buddies. Next thing to look for is filled columns. We have this column filled. So we want to look at these more carefully. We know the 6s are done. We already have the 8 marked in the box. The 2 is already in the box, and the 9's already in the box. So nothing to do there. We would have known that also because we know everything about this box. We know it's down to this 4, 7, 8, and we got the pointing 8s. That's all we would have really learned is this pointing 8s. If we hadn't learned it by now, we would have learned it just now. But we already learned it through other means. So that would be the last chance for you to notice these 8s and these 8s. Which you notice that it is what we would have found with that. Okay. Any columns or boxes down to 4 or fewer? This column is. It's cut down to 3, 4, 7, 9. Well, this can't be 7, so it's down to 3, 4, 9. And this can be any of 3, 4, 7, 9. So not so interesting. And when we do center mark these, we're scanning to see if there's anything that matches. And I just haven't found anything like that yet, but it is something you want to be scanning for. All right, we move on to the next stack because there's no other columns or boxes down to 4 or fewer. So this stack, I'm just gonna start at the bottom here. So we have the 1, 2, 6, 9. 6s are done. 1s do have a buddy, okay. And actually that places the 1 in this box. Now we follow up on this box with this 1. We have a buddy 1. And this 1 looks up, so we can place 1 in this box. We haven't done this stack yet, so we don't need to follow up there. But now we do still need to look if we filled a row or we reduced if we filled a box row. We did not. Did we reduce any rows or boxes down to 4 or fewer? Well, yeah, this box and this row. So let's start with this box. So what does the box need? It needs a 3, 4, 8, 9. So this one's not 9. So this is 3, 4, 8. This one's not 8, so it's 3, 4, 9. And so actually I'm noticing now that the 8 in this box, let's just look at this real quick. This is 3, 4, 8, right? The 8 in this box is actually only in one of these 2 cells. And that's actually kind of a difficult spot without having penciled it because we would have noticed this 8 looking in and this 8 looking in. Now that is something I would have seen in my first pass on the first band in my hard solves, because that's what I call a crossing, but that's not something we look at in the medium solves until we need to. And we found it in an alternative way. But 8 is in one of these 2, and that is going to point. That points down saying these aren't 8. So if this isn't 8, we can remove the 8 center mark. Because again, think about what would happen if this was 8. Well, where would I put 8 in this box? And the answer is nowhere. Nowhere is bad. So this is not an 8. And now our center mark has been reduced to only one option, so it is a naked single 4. Normally I wouldn't even bother removing the 8, I would just place the 4. And that removes the 4 from here. And that does give us an 8-9 pair. I'm going to follow up on that in a moment. I'm going to remember to follow up on that, hopefully, because there's more to do up here. This 4 removes 4 from these 2 cells. Now there's 2 ways to think about that. One way to think about it is that now I have reduced 4 in this box to only one place. If you notice that, awesome. You can place this 4, and then 9 has now been reduced to only one place because the only other place for 9 was here. So we can place the 9. The other way to think about this is we just made a naked 3-8 pair in this box and also in this column. So that naked 3-8 pair, what does that mean? It means, well, this cell is going to be 3 or 8, and this cell is going to be 3 or 8 in the final puzzle. And they can't both be 3 and they can't both be 8. Right? So if they're not both 3 and they're not both 8, one will be 3, one will be 8. Well, if that's true, then how could this be 3? And how could this be 3? And how could this be 3? Right? They share a column, so the rest of the column can't be 3, 8. and they share a box, so the rest of the box can't be 3, 8, because the 3, 8 go here. If you kind of squint, maybe you'll think, well, one of them is 3, one of them's 8, right? So this can't be 3, this can't be 3. And so now we have a naked single 9 and a naked single 4. So that's another way you could see that. It also affects the column. The way I think about this is there's just one more digit that we don't know about in this column. It's the 5. Where's the 5 go? It can only go there. So now we're going to start getting a lot of stuff to follow up on at once. I recommend following up on the easiest stuff first. So this is a naked single 3. We can clean up the 4s from these 2 cells. And then think about the 4 in this box now. This 4 looks in. And now there's only one place for 4 in the box. Hopefully you notice that. So that places the 4 here. Or alternatively, you could have followed up on the 4 using the buddy system. And we would have placed that 4. Now this box is down to 3 digits, so 3, 5, 7. I'm going to do that right away because it makes a 3, 5, 7 naked triple. Just like our naked pair, between these 3 cells, this cell's going to be 3, 5, or 7. This cell's going to be 3, 5, or 7. Ranks, why did you say 5? 5 isn't an option. I'm going to pretend it is. There's no reason I can't. This cell's down to 3, 5, 7. This cell's down to 3, 5, 7. This cell's down to 3, 5, 7. I can always add bad candidates. That's not going to ruin any logic. And so here, I'll add the 3, I'll add the 5. Now you can see that because they can't all be 3, they can't all be 5, they can't all be 7, we can't repeat digits at all. We only have 3 digits available for these 3 cells. So that's what they're going to be. One of them will be 3, one of them will be 5, one of them will be 7. We just know that this one won't maybe end up being the 5 and this one won't end up being the 3, but that's fine. The logic is the same. This is a naked triple. That means the rest of the row and the rest of the box can't be 3, 5, 7. So if this can't be 3, then it's an 8. And then now we need a 9 in the row, right? Or if you prefer, this can't be 3, 5, or 7, so it can only be 9. That 9 then resolves this 8, 9 pair. So that's even better than just having that naked pair. And then this box is down to 2 digits, right? I want to just pencil that if I can. I can. 5 and 8 is what's left. This 8 tells us the order. This is 5, this is 8. All right. Lots to follow up on. This puzzle is what I would call collapsed. It's a collapsed puzzle. No matter where you look, you're going to find something useful and easy. So at this point, I would almost recommend, just look for, you can kind of get a feel for, I just filled a ton of digits, right? You can try to follow up individually on all of them. Or what you can do is you can say, well, this column, for example, is down to only 2 open cells, 2 or 3 open cells. Let's just pencil them and see if we can just get any easy stuff out of that. So what are the 2 digits remaining for this column? Well, it's the 2 and the 3. This 2 tells us that there's 3, 2 like this, right? We're just getting digits at this point. Everywhere we look, this box is down to 2 cells. We have the 1, 2, 3. We need 4 and 5. Even though we don't know where the 4 or 5 go, we still get a really nice marking out of that. And that's going to help us later, save some time. What else do we have? Did we get any? If it's 4, I wouldn't look at it yet. If it's 3 or fewer, I think it's worth looking at. And that's all I'm seeing. There might be more. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back through and try to just follow up as best I can on the bands and the stacks I already did. So this band here, we don't really need to worry about it. We just have this one horizontal triple left. So we don't need to worry about that. Here, I'm focusing on the blue digits mostly. And I'm seeing, okay, I placed a 2, 5, and 6. The 6s are done. The 2 doesn't have a buddy. And it doesn't usefully affect this box. The 5 doesn't usefully affect any box. Not really, no. Okay, so I don't think there's anything horizontal to do here, but we did reduce this to 4 or fewer. So now's the time to think about it. What we have left is 3, 5, 7, 9. So this is 3, 5, 9. It can't be 7. This is 3, 5, or actually, this cell can't be 3, 7, or 9. So it is a naked single 5. That's why we look at these restricted rows, columns and boxes. So that 5 resolves this 4 or 5 pair. It also makes this only 3, 9. This 4, we might as well clean that up. It does mean 4 is in one of these 2. Let's mark that as well. But we have 3, 7, 9 left over here. This one's not 3 or 9, so it is a naked single 7. And we are left with, this can't be 9, so we're left with 3, 9 for the row. This can't be 9, so this is a naked 3. This is a naked 9. Look at all that. This 7 resolves this whole triple, because the 7 and the 3 we placed gives us the 5, the 7, and the 3, right? Now this whole triple resolves. This is the 8, this is the 4, this is the 7. This is not a 3. You can see from the red digits which ones aren't possible anymore from trivial Sudoku rules, because we placed digits. I'm noticing this column is down to 2 digits, so I'm just immediately just zeroing in on it and penciling it. There's a few others around the grid. Can only pay attention to one at once, though. This is down to 1, 5. This 5 tells us this is the 1, this is the 5. This is down to 4, 9. I think it's just a pair, but it's good to fill that pair. And this is down to 2, 8. Good to fill that pair as well. Okay, this row is down to 2. I'm just noticing that, so let's do it. We need the 5 and the 7. We know that's 7, that's 5, because of that 5 there. That 7 reduces the corner marks here, letting us place the 7 here. Down here, we are down to 3 and 8. This 8 tells us this is 3, this is 8. You see what I mean by the puzzle's collapsed? Wherever we look, we're just placing digits. So that's just going to be the most efficient way to finish the puzzle, rather than trying to like continue a systematic scan. But if you ever get stuck, go back to the systematic scan. This is a 3 just for the column. Here we need 2 more digits. We do need a 2 and a 9. Not resolved. Okay, well, these will resolve it. We have these 2 columns that are down to 2 each. We do need a 3. We know the 3 goes here. And then the other digit for the column is an 8. Sorry, not an 8. I missed it. It's a 4. That's a 4. And that 4 resolves the 9 and 4. The 9 resolves the 2, 9. The 2 resolves the 8, 2. This is always fun at the end. We have 1 and 8 left. That's 1, that's 8. And we're done. Like I said, it takes me like usually 30 to 40 minutes to solve these. But it's because of all the explanation. I'm trying to be as thorough as I can. I'm trying to be as systematic as I can. It is a bit instinct-based. A little bit instinct-based to go, okay, the puzzle's collapsed. Let's stop the systematic scan and just start placing digits. If you find that, okay, you picked a point and you said, okay, let's just start placing digits, and you find that you're just not placing them, go back to the systematic scan. But really, it came down to I just had to look for rows, columns, boxes that were like 4 or fewer. And I just kept having more and more and more of those, especially ones down to 2, down to 3. And they just kept being super helpful. So I just kept doing it, right? And by doing that, I was making more rows, columns, boxes down to 4 or fewer. Once you're at that point where it's just cascading like that, just start center marking stuff, right? In those restricted areas. And you'll have a good time. All right. Well, that's the solve for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was instructional. Let me know how you did. And of course, if you enjoyed this, why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.